Hello there everyone, and welcome back to Empire Total War with the Imperial Destroyer mod. And up until this point I must say that even though I won a lot of battles, most of them I've won kind of barely scraping by. And I've really been on a downturn since I first started, and it's going down and down and down. And after the last episode I went ahead and did a few turns, and I was sort of, you know, what can I do, playing a bit off camera, see if I can improve some stuff. And I noticed that, you know, the trend kept going. I was going downhill, 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 until, you know, full stacks turned up from all sides, more or less. And so I had to gamble. I had to do something very bold. And so what I did, and what I'm going to show you in this episode, because this is a bit special, because what I did was I decided that I was going to go just full on, and I'm going to, like, yeah, fight the enemy in a way, and I'm gonna just conquer territory. And I did this off camera, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna see 3 battles that I've saved the replays of, and I'm gonna explain here what went down. So basically my idea was at first to go to the east, use the Eastern Army, because that's the biggest army I have. And so I intended to use that, go against the Russians, possibly cut off the Russians, the Russian way of attack, because right now they're really going around St. Petersburg, and they're going around and then they're going and attacking Obo. And I've had a plan to go in there, but that didn't really work, and so I concocted what I think is probably a very ambitious plan, which was I had 4 units of infantry. And my plan was, I'm going to use these 4 units of infantry, and I'm going to conquer Norway. And as you might remember, there was quite a few militia troops running about in Sweden, Danish militia troops running around in Sweden, just causing mayhem. But my first plan was, I need to secure the port of Malmö and make sure that I get my trade back. So that was my first step. So the first step was to march down, which took 2 turns roughly. And I marched down, I pushed out the Prussian navy, I attacked, took the port back, no casualties of course, pushed out the navy, but then of course, if I had, my plan was to attack Norway, but I couldn't leave the port, because as soon as I left the port they would obviously just send the navy in again. So one of the 4 units I had to station down there, and then the 3 remaining had to go north. Now at this point you probably can see what has happened, that I actually control Norway, but with those 3 units I marched up, and a bit north of Gothenburg the militia army of the Danish Norwegians met me in battle. So somewhere around here is the first battle, and that battle is the battle we're gonna cut into right now, and we're gonna see that. And so here we are on the first battle. I was not as sure at all at this point that my plan was going to work. So at this point it was really like such a far shot that I was sure that this was just gonna fall apart quite easily and very quickly. So the enemy, as we can see, has 7 columns of militia, each column comprising of 360 men. So their army numbered around 2,500 or something like that. So there's a lot of Danish, and there's only 3 regiments of Swedish troops hiding here in the forest, ready to ambush them. So one key thing here was I moved this guy around a bit, and when they noticed the Danish, they actually sent troops towards that. But right now, only the general is visible, and that currently leads the enemy army to walk basically into my trap. So the AI is not aware of these two troops, and quite soon we're going to see probably the greatest volley ever fired in any Empire Total War game. So any second now I will call these guys in to march up and ready to fire their volley. Right, so first regiment marches up a bit. You can see the Danish are moving. So at this point I'm like, oh, I'm screwed. The enemy is going into line formation. They're preparing to fire. My first volley here does yak shit. It kills, what, 12 people? However, this one. So the Danish, for some reason, I don't know why, decide to charge. We're gonna see the absolute destruction of this regiment. Take a look at this, guys. Right, so they ran right into the smoke. 300, remember, 360 men. 15 Swedish have died in this regiment right here. There's only about 40 Danish soldiers that get away from this. The rest of them, 300 so men, lie dead in front of this regiment. Now they deliver another just as devastating volley on another Danish regiment, and that right there symbolized what we just did. Within seconds here of the start, this regiment has lost 29 men. The Danish militia regiments, 2 of them are absolutely destroyed, meaning there's at least already 600 dead Danish-Norwegian troops, all caused by these immense volleys. And you can see here, I mean, they managed to contact and they did some melee right here. But you can see that most of them were actually shot down because the perfectly timed volley that went into them and destroyed all of them, really. And then we have this one, so that even the 3rd Danish militia regiment was cut down to size and lost 260 men. So at this point, almost half the Danish militiaman army has been crushed by only 2 Swedish regiments. Now there's still danger because there's still 4 enemy regiments left, and they've been fighting with the general's unit, which have been holding on to this forested area right here, and they are suffering casualties. And if this is the main thing about this campaign. Not only did I need to defeat superior number of enemy troops, I need to keep my troops as intact as possible, and this unit has now lost 40, 50, 60 men. So that's not very good. But the enemy is gonna hold their position. There's 1 regiment behind here, and then I'm not entirely sure where the 4th one is. I think they ran away and hid it somewhere. No, wait, it is 3 regiments right here. There are 3, but it's hard to see. It looks like there's 2, but they've managed to put them all sort of on top of each other. So this was quite nice. This one moves up, fires volley. This one comes directly after, moves through, and then they fire their volley right into the flank of this Danish regiment, which is about to run. As we see, they've lost 160 men. There's just a pile of dead Norwegian Danish militiamen right here, and at the same time they still have to deal with this regiment pushing down fire. Now this guy, the general unit, has lost 100 men at this point, so it's not going too well for us. I'm sending one of my regiments in to deal with the enemy general regiment, which is put back here, and then I'm keeping these guys in the flank, pushing fire into these guys, which is 2 regiments at this point merge. So I'm not entirely sure what the Danish thought here, but they create perfect targets for my army. And we can see they're down to, this one is down to 120, this one's down to 187, and now this one runs as well. So at this point, I mean, I almost can't believe it that I've been able to destroy such a superior a force with such superior numbers. So it's only the general unit fighting this one, and this one, I mean, it's only lost 15 men at this point against the Danish, which have lost almost 30. So definitely it's not going too well for the Danish, especially firing into the forest. They're kind of, most of this regiment's outside of the forest and not subject to the bonus of being in there and being able to defend. The Danish regiments are gonna come back, and I'm gonna have to send them off, but we don't want to show too much of each battle because that's gonna be a hell of a long video. As the battles progressively becomes longer, as I have to do a lot of maneuvers, move back and forth to be able to defeat the enemy. So at this point I'm holding this regiment back, getting them reloaded. We're gonna march up real close, fire in the flank, and once this regiment retreats, there's most likely where I'll end the video. As you can see, I mean, you can see the writing is on the wall. The Swedish army has won. So we're going to just take a closer look at this volley. So I'm moving them real close. Now still it is forested area, so it will soak up a lot of bullets, but we'll still be able to do quite a substantial volley into these guys. But you can really see the power difference in between a normal Swedish line infantry regiment and the Danish militia. So I think we'll look from this angle. Boom, punishing the Danish there for not sort of falling back and regrouping. 200 men still in the regiment, so they're going to come back, but at this point, I mean, there's this one, 180 men here, and then this one. So we've equalized the playing field at this point by cutting these guys absolutely to shreds. And you can see that my regiments, these two, suffered very few casualties. This one's down 100 men, this one's down 40 men, and this one's down 30 men. So comparatively, the Danish have lost thousands of men, while I have basically lost a little bit over. I think the end score will be that I've lost just shy of 300 men, so I'll still lose a third of my army. But the Danish, of course, they lose so many men, 2,000 out of 2,500 or something like that. I can't exactly remember, but I mean, look at this casualty group right here. There's a few Swedish guys dead here. Looks like is that the Danish officer or is it the Swedish officer? It's Danish officer. Completely just everything blown apart there. But with that said, let's go back to the campaign map and I'll explain the continued movements of my regiments, shall we? Right, and so we had that battle right there against that militia army, and now the way to Norway looked open. I had managed to smash superior numbers of Danish-Norwegian troops. Now the way looked open, and so I click on my army, direct them to Norway. Let's have one more battle and let's win this. There's probably not a big garrison in Norway. I can do this. So we march. We punch the fortress of Fredriksten, and then as soon as I about got, well, basically on the town, it turns out there's a militia army stationed outside of town, and they basically ambush me. Or not really ambush me, but they ambush or incept. I can't remember exactly what happened. I guess it was a ambush, because they caught my units, as I remember, started off in column formation, so it basically ambushed me. So right now what we're gonna see is an ambush battle, where the Denmark-Norwegian militia army ambushed me, and yeah, it's quite a sizable one. So let's go on to that battle, shall we? We have now arrived at the second battle, which I was not expecting to fight. The enemy managed to ambush me, so we've got 5 enemy regiments against my 3. These are full regiments of enemy militia against my 3 regiments that have already gone through a battle. And we weren't actually ambushed here on the hill. What happened was the enemy was strung out along here, ready to attack my regiments that was stationed in column in the forest. Luckily for me, there's no fatigue in the game for some reason. He decided to remove that, and he didn't. There was no option. Like there's no. That provides certain amount of option where you can reinstate features that was removed, like forming square, higher accuracy for musket and stuff like that. But there was nothing to introduce fatigue back, so it quickly became, you know, looking around. Okay, I'm ambushed. I'm looking around from the forest. Where can I go? Oh wait, there's a big hill behind me. Let's run there. So that was my first task, to just get away from the enemy and get a pretty good position. But the problem is, of course, it's still, as we can see, it's still lines versus lines, and there's 2 more lines of them, and there's so many more troops. So I have maybe, I start off with 250 in this, so we're up to 500, 500, 600, 700 men, compared with the enemy, which has maybe as many as 2,000 men, or close to 2,000 men. So I'm definitely in a difficult situation here. So what we want to do, or what I want to do, is really what I did in the last battle, which was, well, obviously it would be nice if they charged me straight up the hill, but that's not going to happen. So what I need to do is I need to concentrate the enemy troop. And I wasn't really sure how to do this first, because, I mean, my gut reaction was just to get away from them, to save my troops. So I've been pulling up to the hill here, and as you can see, I'm slowly falling back, because we're taking quite a bit of casualty. This unit has taken more than 50 men casualties. 60, 70 men has died out of this unit, which is really bad when you're outnumbered maybe as much as 3 to 1 in the battle. So, and as we see, I have less regiments. So I want to do what I did in the last battle, where I was able to, the enemy concentrated themselves, and I was able to stay drawn out in lines and able to fire at their concentrated formation. And we can see that happening right now. So as I'm pulling back, the enemy is moving forwards, and there's a lot of these areas like this one here, that is impassable territory, which means as the enemy draws forward to attack me, they are forced into these channels which they have to go through. So right now we have 3 enemy regiments, possibly even 4, having to go in through this very narrow canal of attack, where I can stay in my long lines, making sure that I suffer as little casualties as possible, while maximizing my firepower down upon the enemy. And I'm shooting these guys to pieces as they advance. And we're gonna see a pretty beautiful attack here. We're gonna charge up real close. So I was worried here that maybe the unit wasn't gonna be able to organize itself and fire in time and the enemy might be able to respond. But luckily for me, that's not the case. So I was able to kill about 100 men in that volley, or something along that line. And then I'd realized, you know what, I'm not going to be able to stand if they return fire. So I charge in, and quite quickly the enemy regiments start falling apart. I mean, they were already going in the wrong direction. They weren't really responding to my men. So in this charge, I'm pretty sure that I lose like less than, I don't know exactly how many I had to begin with, but some of these men that were thrown out here are actually people that I shot. I should have actually checked how many were coming over the hill, but I'm pretty sure that I lost barely no one, and the guys that I did lose was from this unit firing. So I was able to take out one of their regiments, and so now it's 4 versus 3, which have improved my situation immensely. And I keep charging these guys away. 75 men, they're not gonna come back. And as we see me pulling back here, the enemy is once again focusing in on this area, and so they're doubling down with all their regiments. One of them is pulling away. In this area right here, where I have, you know, furiously been firing down range at them, causing massive amounts of casualties. We've lost only about, in this unit, this one has lost 50, and this one has lost about 30. So still pretty high casualties for me, but nothing compared to the enemy. This one's lost 160, this one's lost 40, this one is even routing, it's lost half of its men. And now I'm able to come in from the flank right here, and will be able to sort of put in the kill as they're now, as I now is able to lay superior amount of muskets. I already have superior amount of accuracy, so very soon there's gonna be no Danish left, or Danish Norwegian. This unit's coming back, but as in previous battles stated, I mean, the result of the battle is at this point clear. I have won. It's just a matter of numbers now. How many men am I gonna lose? How many men are they gonna lose? So my main concern is really, at this point, I don't want that many Danish Norwegian troops to retreat, because my estimation is that they would retreat into town, and they're gonna get reinforced from the town militia. And as we see, my units at this point, I mean, from the original size, this one's lost 2/3 of its unit from the start of campaign. This one's lost 100, so 1/3. And this one also has basically lost about half. So I've lost a substantial force out of my original one. So out of the almost 1,000 men that I start with, I am now down to about 450 men. The enemy is holding a little bit. We've got one regiment deciding to stand here, but they stand no chance. I'm not entirely sure if one more is going to come back. Yes, just in time as this one breaks, these two return. But the battle is basically over, and I have won yet another pretty stunning victory, and against a superior force of Danish troops. But we still have one more battle, and we're gonna go into that battle having lost about 2/3 of my original strength, and the enemy is gonna get they're gonna get a number of full regiments defending the town, of course, more town militia. So it's gonna be a harrowing experience, or it's gonna be a tough battle, that one as well. So I think we'll jump straight into, or back to the campaign. I'll continue explaining, and then we'll jump into the third battle, shall we? Right, and so we won that battle as well, moving up on top of that hill, being able to defeat that militia army. My fear at first was that the militia army would actually retreat to Christiania here in Norway, and that would shore up the city, and it would make even harder for... That would basically make it impossible for me to take it. Luckily for me, the army... Oh, sorry. The army that ambushed me actually moves past the city and retreats up into the hills behind the city, so somewhere around here, and the city lays open. But at this point, of course, my army has... I mean, I only had 3 units, and now, I mean, there's not going to be a lot of garrison holding the town, but there's still going to be a garrison of at least, you know, maybe 1,000 men or more holding the town against my, you know, cut to pieces army. So we'll see how this goes. Obviously, you can see at this point that I managed to complete the task, but there's still quite the harrowing battle. And so let's jump into the third and final battle, shall we? And so we have arrived at the last battle, the Battle of Oslo. Well, it wasn't called Oslo, it's, what's it called? Christiania, or something like that, I think. Yes. So we've arrived at the final battle in this, my Norwegian campaign. And as we can see, we're down to about, I think I calculated to about 500 men. The enemy numbers around then a little more than 1,000 men. So it's about 2 to 1. And I'm trying to do the same thing I've done before, which is to get the enemy to move into a bottleneck where they clump their troops together and I can cause mass damage. Now, the start of this, I actually did do that because, well, I didn't show that part, but you got some impassable terrain right here. And very nicely, the enemy actually lets us start on, or the battle here lets us start on this hill overlooking the town, which is kind of strange. But we gain the high ground to start off with. But the enemy doesn't actually advance upon us. So before we came into this situation, I was actually strung out along just the edge here. And the enemy was down here. And it wasn't until I started moving the general unit off to the side that this unit started to come around to swing around and attack us from here. And these two started advancing up the hill here. And as you can see, these two are on the way of going to exactly where I want them. The problem is the angle here. So the angle turns very steeply right here. And the enemy... I mean, the best situation would be if they were right here. Because then there would be no like cover for them. But actually down here they have a little bit of a cover, which stops quite a few of my bullets and will help the enemy to shoot me. Or actually, it gets worse the closer they get to being on this ledge, or whatever you want to call it. And we're gonna suffer quite a bit of casualties. And this battle is gonna drag out for quite a bit as I'm pulling more and more back up the hill, trying to drag the enemy with me, getting them to move into these sweet spots where I can destroy them without suffering too many casualties. But my units are gonna be very depleted, but also very experienced by the end of this. So we continuously try to organize ourselves and move around to drag them closer and closer, but they never really get there. So here's a very dangerous situation when they get in full line. And I obviously have to retreat in order to save my men, because we don't... This is the exact point we don't want. We don't want the enemy to be able to lay lines like this against me and be able to push down damage like this towards my lines. Luckily for me, actually pushing back leaves this one alone, and we're able to cut this one down. It will actually return for a bit, but just in time for something else to happen that will cause them to rout once more. So the enemy general, or captain, or whatever you want to call him, colonel, or who's ever in charge of these two remaining regiments, will actually get shot. I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure he's in this regiment. So we could see about finding him. No, I think this guy is actually already dead. So, no, there he is. So we can actually follow this one and see when he falls. So this regiment, it will come back just in time, more or less, for the officer of this regiment to get shot. Also, we get a closer look at the Danish flag with two half-naked men on it. Let's see, the regiment's just about to come back. I think this is the one. Our general is in this unit, so he is the one that actually taken the most damage throughout this campaign. He has lost 2/3 of his unit. But I kind of got the enemy where I want. So this regiment right here is now firing to the one straight ahead and not actually firing on my general, which I'll be able to move the general towards the flank, lay fire into the flank, which obviously creates a bigger target, and will be able to inflict quite a bit of damage. At the same time, this one's already dropped 160 men, and it's going to drop a few more before the day is over, and it's going to rout as well. But because I have so few men, I'm not really able to deliver those knockout punches. So the enemy will come back and come back and come back throughout the battle, and in the end of it, we're not going to have... Oh, there he went. There he goes. And he was almost... Looks like he was the only one that fell in that volley, yes. So only somehow some Swedish sniper is able to shoot out the enemy officer in charge of this. Poor old Werner. And he gets shot down. And this leads to this regiment, which we can kind of see that they were on the way back, but they retreated. And also this morale drop is causing this one to falter. Now at this point, what I probably should have done to end this is to sacrifice a few men, call in a bayonet charge, and get rid of this regiment, so all three of them would be retreating at the same time. But instead I opted for what I thought would be the more safe option, is to continuously shoot this one down, and it will allow the other regiment to come back, and in so continuing the battle. So very soon here it will be 3 regiments on 1, which I really should have charged in my general, which probably would have caused the militia regiment to run. We can see this regiment is back again. So you know what? It probably wouldn't actually have worked. But we can see the numbers are really down on all regiments. Both these are down to around 160. This one's 130. My regiment here has lost 100 men. They're down to 84 men. This one has lost quite a few as well, and down to 60 men. This one's down to 81. So at this point, I mean, we're 80. We're down to 200 men. Here I actually call in a bayonet charge, and we're able to hit them before they fire at us. And the regiment is sent off, making sure that they get cut to pieces and will not return, sending in the other regiment as well. At the same time, this one, I guess seeing their friends getting cut to shreds, decides to retreat. But there is this regiment on the way, and I mean, at this point I think almost less than even 200 men, which is less than what one original regiment would have been, which is 320. So we're preparing to attack this one. I'm also trying to chase after this one, because they still have the numbers to come back. What I really should have done here is probably pressed the attack on these guys and continue to follow up these. We're gonna speed up here a bit. And we're moving into the attack, and there we go. This one's back. I should have pressed the attack on that one. So at this point, we have 200 men against about 260 enemies. Luckily for me, I do have this one. It's in a good position. It's covered by the forest, and they can move quickly up into the flank here and deliver a devastating volley in the final moments of the battle. There's still 115, so continuously pushing these guys and shooting at them is the right thing to do, making sure that they are gone. We still have this one, so 134 men, but at this point right now in the battle, I do outnumber the enemy, provided that this one does not come back. It's still quite a few of them, and they're in forested area right now, and yeah, we'll see how this goes. So I've stationed this one, which is 59 men, firing downhill into the forest. I mean, it's not a great position. We do have, however, these two regiments coming in close, and hopefully we'll be able to secure victory here. The enemy turns to face this regiment instead, which saves this one, which is this point down to 56 men of its original size, which was at the start of battle 149, so they've lost about 2/3 of their regiment. And then in total the regiment was, of course, to start off with 320, so they have suffered massive casualties from the start of this campaign. This one's down to 68, 67 at this point, but we do have this one ready to move in, deliver the final volley. Probably should have moved them. I should have probably dared to go closer, but I decided to hold right there. Had I gone closer, I'd be able to deliver a more decisive volley, and we would probably have destroyed the regiment a lot earlier and saved casualties on this regiment right here, which is currently came under heavy fire, down to 55 men. This one's 70, but I'm gonna do it on this side instead. So we've got 56 men able to deliver shots into the back of this regiment, because they're turned in kind of a weird angle and firing down at the enemy right there. And then to end it, these charge in, and just as they charge in, the enemy actually breaks as soon as we contact with them, and the battle is over, and the campaign for Norway is over with a stunning victory. So with only 3 regiments, I was able to take out somewhere in the lines of, I don't know exactly how many Norwegian troops we took out, but I'd say at the maximum around 6,000, possibly probably a little bit lower, but around 5,000 to 6,000 troops with only about 1,000 Swedish, so 1 to 6, and we were able to win. Now obviously I couldn't have done this if the enemy was actually fielding proper line infantry regiment, and if they had a proper general and such, but I think it's still a pretty darn nice victory, given that we were able to cut down so many men. So we can see what I calculated roughly that I deployed about 500 men, which wasn't really true. 444 men was deployed against 1,080 enemies. And you see the losses here. The enemy lost 80% of their army, and I lost about a little more than half. So quite an amazing victory, and quite an amazing run, really, for these 3 battles. And I mean, this victory turned it around in such a way that, I mean, it completely did a 180 for me in terms of, I mean, I was ready a bit before embarking this campaign. I was ready to almost hand it in. I was thinking, you know what, I'd probably have to restart this campaign and not drag the Prussians in at the beginning, because it was going so poorly for me. But with this campaign, I was able to turn it around, 180. Now we still have problem, because we still have the Prussians to deal with, and the Prussians are a mighty force. We still have the Russians looming, and I mean, I've destroyed one of their full stacks, but they are building real full stacks that are on the way. And I mean, I've spotted like 3 of them, I think, or something like that, out hiding in sort of the edges of my view. So it's certainly not over with this, but let's go back to the campaign and yeah, let's take a look at what's going on. And so there we have it. I took these 3 regiments, I won 3 battles, and I captured Norway. And as we can see, there's not a lot of men left. There's 150 men left of an army that originally started off with, I mean, there's 320 in each, so that's what, 960 men. There's 150 of them left, but they were able to smash through. You know, if you counted roughly, I know the first army had like, I think they caused 2,500 casualties or something like that on them, or something similar. So we're talking about defeating about almost 6,000 or maybe 6,000 Danish Norwegian militia men units or soldiers with just about 1,000 men. So 6 to 1 was the odds, and I managed to do it. And I was able to take Norway, and not only that, I was able to force the Danish to sign a peace agreement. When I sent a peace agreement to Denmark, and they said, okay, we're gonna accept the peace, but only if you allow trade with us. So I have a trade, not only have we peace, but I have a trade agreement with them. So if we can go and check here, trade partner Denmark. So Denmark obviously not very happy at this point that they lost Norway and lost so many men. But I mean, up until this point, we have done rather poorly throughout the battles and so forth. But this is really, I mean, this campaign to take Norway from Denmark is really worthy of the legacy of Charles XII, King of Sweden. This is the kind of sort of legendary battle strategy and so forth that makes the Great Nordic War so interesting, and kind of in a similar sense of what actually happened in the war. The king sort of very early on managed to surprise the Danish and basically shock them into surrendering. Obviously there wasn't a lot of land gain compared to what I have done here, but and also I did it without the help of the Dutch and the English Navy. And with this also, not only by securing, I've got a port here as well in Bergen, so that has allowed me to open up a lot of trade agreements that were lost earlier, because as we remember, when they burnt my port and took it and so forth, a lot of my trade agreements dropped away, and so I only had the British and the French one. But after regaining this and also regaining Bergen, I've been able to set up trade agreements with a lot of nations that I didn't have before. So Denmark won, that was part of the peace with Denmark. but I was able to get one with the Ottoman Empire again. I got one with the Banjar, which I guess it's a state in India, and then Maratha Confederacy, also Indians. So I've been able to increase my trade quite substantially from 0 to 1500 a turn. So that has made me from, I mean, just a few turns ago, I was just barely breaking even, and now I'm almost at 3000 plus a month. So not only have I secured this side of Sweden, I'll be able to repair all of this, increase my revenue even more, and we can start producing troops and stuff, and you know, attack the enemy in the coming episodes. One thing that I should say that I did was, as soon as I ended the turn, what I noticed was that Kurland would send their navy out, attack my navy that was on the way to pick up the second general up here, and so they would sink the navy more or less, except for the 2 admiral ships that would then be pushed over here. So what I did was preemptively, and kind of a bit why I currently have so much money, was that I completely disbanded the navy, because I needed the money then and then, or like that right there. So I disbanded it completely, which, I mean, I might come to regret it, because it's going to be important to the strategy of holding Prussia out of my territory, is obviously going to be able to sink their navies before they're actually able to attack me. But I have some other plans that we will hopefully be able to deal with the Prussians and push them out of the war as well. One thing that I also actually tried was, once the navy sank and I decided, you know what, I still need a general for the Norwegian campaign. So then my plan was to have the general walk around, but as soon as he actually left the city, and I mean, he made it somewhere around here in eastern Sweden, and then he got assassinated, so that didn't really work. But this is the situation right now. I hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully I will capture the magic when I'm actually right in doing it, and not showing you the replays. But as I always say, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and hopefully I'll see you guys for the next one. Bye!